Franz Kafka, a name that evokes images of labyrinthine bureaucracies, existential dread, and the haunting absurdity of modern life. But what if I told you that Kafka, the man behind the term Kafkaesque, was also a master of dark humor? Today, we'll dive deep into the life of Franz Kafka, exploring not only his struggles and literary genius, but also the often overlooked humor that permeates his work. By the end of this video, you'll see Kafka in a new light, not just as a prophet of despair, but as a writer who found laughter in the darkest corners of existence. Franz Kafka was born on July 3, 1883, in Prague, a city that was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Prague's rich cultural and intellectual atmosphere would later influence Kafka's writing, but his childhood was far from idyllic. Kafka was the eldest of 6 children, though 2 of his brothers died in infancy. His father, Hermann Kafka, was a domineering and self-made businessman who ran a successful dry goods store. Hermann's larger-than-life personality cast a long shadow over Kafka's life, leaving him feeling inadequate and perpetually seeking approval. This strained father-son relationship would become a recurring theme in Kafka's writing, most notably in the Metamorphosis and Letter to His Father. Kafka's mother, Julie, was more nurturing but often overshadowed by her husband's forceful presence. Kafka once described his upbringing as a struggle for survival, a sentiment that would later manifest in his character's battles against incomprehensible forces. Despite this, Kafka was a bright and sensitive child, excelling in school and developing a love for literature at an early age. Images of Charles University, Kafka's office, and insurance documents. Kafka's academic journey took him to Charles University in Prague, where he initially studied chemistry before switching to law. Law was a practical choice, one that would please his father and provide a stable career. But Kafka's heart was always in literature. He spent much of his free time reading and writing, immersing himself in the works of Goethe, Dostoevsky, and Flaubert. After graduating, Kafka took a job at an insurance company where he worked for over a decade. The job was tedious and draining, but it gave Kafka a first-hand look at the bureaucratic machinery that would later feature so prominently in his writing. Despite the demands of his day job, Kafka was fiercely dedicated to his craft. He wrote late into the night, often sacrificing sleep to pour his thoughts onto the page. This nocturnal routine took a toll on his health, but it was during these quiet hours that Kafka produced some of his most enduring works. His writing was deeply personal, a way to grapple with his inner demons and make sense of the world around him. Kafka's writing is often described as Kafkaesque, a term that has come to symbolize the absurd, the surreal, and the nightmarish. His stories are filled with characters who find themselves trapped in incomprehensible situations, struggling against forces they can neither understand nor control. Take the Metamorphosis, for example. The story begins with Gregor Samsa waking up to find himself transformed into a giant insect. It's a shocking premise, but Kafka treats it with a matter-of-factness that is both unsettling and darkly humorous. Gregor's first concern isn't his transformation, but how he'll get to work on time. This juxtaposition of the extraordinary and the mundane is a hallmark of Kafka's humor. It's the kind of humor that makes you laugh, even as you feel a pang of discomfort. Kafka's humor isn't about punchlines or slapstick. It's about highlighting the absurdity of human existence. In The Trial, for instance, the protagonist, Joseph K., is arrested and put on trial for a crime that is never explained. The absurdity of the situation is both tragic and comical, a reflection of Kafka's own struggles with feelings of guilt and inadequacy. Kafka's humor is often overlooked, but it's an essential part of his writing. His stories are filled with moments of dark comedy, where the absurdity of the situation is so extreme that it becomes funny. In The Castle, the protagonist, K, spends the entire novel trying to gain access to a mysterious castle, only to be thwarted at every turn by a labyrinthine bureaucracy. The sheer futility of K's efforts is both frustrating and hilarious, a perfect example of Kafka's unique brand of humor. Even in his personal letters, Kafka's wit shines through. In one letter to his friend Max Brod, Kafka wrote, "I am a cage in search of a bird." It's a poignant metaphor, but it's also darkly funny. Kafka had a knack for turning his own struggles into something both tragic and comical, a skill that makes his work so relatable and enduring. Kafka's personal life was as complex and fraught as his writing. He was engaged multiple times but never married, often expressing a fear of commitment and a belief that his writing would suffer if he settled into a conventional life. His relationships with women like Felice Bauer and Milena Jasenska were intense and often tumultuous, marked by long, passionate letters and frequent misunderstandings. Kafka's letters reveal a man deeply conflicted about love, intimacy, and his own identity. Yet, even in his personal correspondence, Kafka's humor is ever present. In one letter to Felice, he wrote, "I cannot live with you, and I cannot live without you." It's a sentiment that captures the paradox of Kafka's relationships, his desire for connection, and his fear of losing himself in the process. Despite his struggles, Kafka found moments of joy and companionship, particularly in his final years with Dora Diamant, a young woman who shared his love of literature and supported him during his battle with tuberculosis. Kafka's life was cut short by tuberculosis, a disease he battled for years. In his final years, he moved to Berlin with Dora Diamant, hoping to find peace and focus on his writing. Despite his declining health, Kafka continued to write, producing some of his most poignant and introspective work. However, much of his writing remained unfinished, a reflection of his lifelong struggle with self-doubt and perfectionism. Before his death on June 3, 1924, Kafka instructed his friend Max Brod to burn his unpublished works. Thankfully, Brod ignored this request, recognizing the literary genius of Kafka's writing. Thanks to Brod's defiance, Kafka's work was preserved and eventually published, ensuring his place as one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. Today, Kafka's influence can be seen everywhere, from literature and film to philosophy and psychology. The term Kafkaesque has entered the lexicon, used to describe situations that are bizarre, illogical, and nightmarish. But Kafka's legacy goes beyond his influence on language and culture. His work continues to resonate with readers because it speaks to the universal human experience, the struggle to find meaning in a chaotic and often absurd world. Kafka's humor is a key part of this legacy. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always room for laughter. Kafka's humor isn't about making light of suffering, it's about finding a way to cope with it. As Kafka himself once wrote, "There is an infinite amount of hope in the universe, just not for us." And yet, in exploring Kafka's life and work, we find a strange kind of hope. A reminder that even in the most absurd and challenging moments, there is always room for laughter. Franz Kafka's life was marked by struggle, but his humor and insight continue to resonate with readers around the world. In his words, "A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us." Kafka's work has certainly shattered many frozen seas, challenging us to confront the absurdity of existence and find meaning in the chaos. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life and humor of Franz Kafka. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of literary giants. Until next time, keep reading, keep laughing, and keep exploring the infinite complexities of the human experience.